We have to dissect and deconstruct the podcast for this one.
Gosh, yeah.
You should start for the music in this one should just stop immediately and then cut into some random thing.
Yeah. Cut. Yeah, exactly.
And then start it up again.
Yeah.
And then stop.
Oh man, yeah.
Play around with it.
This is definitely not what you thought it was.
And then I set up the Gmail, unauthorized pod at gmail.com.
Nice.
Coming up here, we'll do an episode talking about going to Berlin earlier this year and talking about our experience working through the Sight and Sound list chronologically, all that stuff. I think that comes out July 2nd. But yeah, people should send questions to unauthorizedpod.com, or not .com, unauthorizedpod at gmail.com if they want us to talk about specific things on that episode.
Yeah, so reach out there, or you can also always take a look at the letterbox, and maybe I'll add a link somehow to that there as well. So yeah, reach out. Be fun. Yeah, today we are talking about Godard's Pierrot le Fou.
That's right. I'm Jay Brooks Young.
And I'm Zach Domes.
And this is Some Like It Unauthorized. And
yeah, what was your tagline last week, you said?
I always have to get it back, load it back into my brain.
Yeah.
Some people that you might prefer to go to the experts for your film opinions, but some like it unauthorized.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's great.
I'm glad you like that. Chapter 1, The Early Years. Young Godard was
Godard's first existential crisis.
Yes. Born into a well-off French family, Godard grew up in Switzerland with his doctor father and the rest of his family.
Were they Swiss?
Yeah, they're French, but they lived in Switzerland basically up until until he was an adult, whatever. Yeah, he very literate family. They would read all kinds of fancy novels and poems in the house out loud. His grandfather, a very wealthy banker, but also a literary executor for this writer that he was friends with, Paul Valéry, I guess a pretty well-known French writer. But yeah, like art, literature, that was always around. He was always taking that in. And it wasn't really until he was a teenager and he got sent to school in Paris that he started going to the movies and really fell in love with film at that point. There were film schools at that time, and when he's figuring out what he's going to do after school, he does apply to the big film school in Paris, but gets rejected. So, he's got in his head he wants to make movies kind of from a young age, but he was on the outside, like a lot of guys. He would go to the screenings at the Cinematheque, which did all kinds of different screenings. They'd show Cocteau films, they'd show American stuff. And a lot of the people that would be involved with Cahiers du Cinéma would go to those screenings, and then they all sit, right up at the front together. Those guys they always talked about how you want to, let the film just like wash over you and just take it all in as close as you can.
And a lot of this, and we may have mentioned this last time, but a lot of this you're getting from Richard Brody's Everything is Cinema, which you've been reading.
Yeah. I definitely recommend it. He distills not just Godard's life and what's going on with him, but kind of cinema landscape, how the critics felt about French films, American films, and like what was happening in France. It's when Godard is a teenager and a young adult, for example, that Jean-Paul Sartre really starts publishing a bunch of stuff and kind of coming up with this idea and executing on this idea of getting famous, that in the post-war world, there's an opportunity for a writer, for someone to kind of make themselves a personality that speaks for the people and like try to get famous, try to like do radio interviews and all these things as a kind of political end. And yeah, Godard was like obsessed with Sartre, would try to go to the like salons and cafes that Sartre was said to have like hung out in, stuff like that. And it's kind of, he sort of tries to follow that playbook in terms of breaking into film. You know, he becomes a critic, he tries to put his name out there that way, and then when he starts making films, he's also really putting himself forward and always advocating for his films in cahiers, even after he's not writing for them anymore, and he's doing those interviews and kind of, you know, and giving off this really too cool persona at all times.
Yeah, and I guess I would also, since you mentioned Sartre, I would link that to his films by saying that Sartre was the existentialist philosopher, and that shares a lot in common with the philosophy of this time, which is saying that there's no inherent meaning necessarily. And Sartre puts forth an idea that you find your own meaning through your own existence. And so a lot of, in some sense, the films that Godard will make have a lot to do with that kind of deconstruction, that kind of teasing apart a film in terms of the way it's made is supposed to make you feel something, like it means something. And he's tearing at that in a way that shares the philosophy of these philosophers at the time.
Right. But, Sartre was a big voice on the left, and the left in France at that time was very much against the import of Hollywood films, and that these were, made in this sort of big capitalist system, and were kind of, the values that they represented were against these sort of socialist values that Sartre and others wanted to try to push France towards. So it was it was unpopular to be a fan of American films. They were seen as shallow, they were seen as flashy and without substance. And Andre Bazin was one of those guys who looked at certain filmmakers and certain films, especially like Orson Welles, and said, I mean, this is getting at something that French films don't get at a lot of the time. That there's an artistry here, and yeah, Bazin is one of the guys that founds Cahiers, and Godard and Truffaut and those guys are gonna come right there and sort of develop this idea of the politic of the auteur, that even when you're working within the Hollywood system, you can be saying something with your films sort of subtextually, and that you can read the different films in a director's filmography in concert together and really see what they're saying overall. And this is part of that sort of celebrity thing where they want to put the director forward and say, this is an artist. Like, you look at what they're doing within the system, they're putting their mark on it in these certain ways, and they're a specific artist in these certain ways, and that's what they want to do with their films eventually. All those guys that are hoping to get to make their films one day.
Yeah, that's well put in terms of the French philosophy in regards to film and the Cahir guys, what they're doing. Yeah, it's all very. Sometimes you watch these films and there's a level of frustration that can come with them sometimes. But the way you just put that, it's like the energy, the novelty of what they were doing. It always is fun to talk about. It's always fun to discuss and think on. It reminds me of the Beats in some way. Like it feels fresh and new this time in history. And even when you watch a film of Godard or Truffaut or whoever it might be in this world, it can sometimes be frustrating. It can sometimes be very challenging. Yeah. And yet there's this energy. There's this energy of novelty that it always seems to have.
I know. I'm having a tough time sometimes with Godard's films, and I feel like maybe my problem is that I'm trying to study them too much, that I'm hearing all these accounts of different directors and stuff saying, like, oh my God, he changed the game, and he did this and that, and I'm trying to figure it out for myself, you know, what he did that was groundbreaking, and maybe looking at them too closely is to my detriment, because God, yeah, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I loved Breathless and kind of the benefit of doing a project like this and like watching so many films from history in a chronological order is Breathless was really, really interesting and unlike things that come before. But now when we get to Pierrot le Fou, it kind of feels like he's I don't know, throwing stuff at the wall and he hasn't advanced past Breathless maybe.
Yeah, it's well, you could say at some point here, like, you know, if you've clicked on this podcast and you're listening, like you said, you've probably already watched the film or don't mind hearing about it before watching. And the case really is with Godard that you should probably watch Breathless first. That'd probably be the obvious way in. And I would almost say Vivre sa vie as well. And then this, if you're going to do this one. But at the same time, it's going to be doing things that, like, I don't know, reminds me of Wes Anderson in some way. And the thing is, how many things is he doing? Like beneath his style that he now has carved out very obviously. He has his own style. He's going to do things the way he's been doing them in the previous films that he's made, and yet he's doing other new things too. It reminds me a lot of Wes Anderson in that way, where the last film that he did,
Asteroid City.
Yeah. Asteroid City was a phenomenal film, and yet a lot of people will watch that and kind of in the back of their mind, they're thinking, I'm watching a Wes Anderson. And yet he's still doing new things, regardless of this style that he's created that's very recognizable. And so, yeah, I know what you mean, but we can get into the sort of things about Pierrot le Fou that are a little bit different than his previous work, I feel.
Yeah, it's I have some difficulty with it, but at the same time, I was just playing the movie again this morning while I was taking some more notes and stuff, and there are a lot of images here that I really love and kind of have almost a nostalgic quality. Like I like these actors, Jean-Paul Belmondo and Anna Karina.
Yeah,
and there are beautiful images in this film. I almost wish for like a better film or something, or I don't know. Like there are things that I really love here, and I think also it's just having seen some of the stuff that will come after, in the late 60s and the 70s, stuff like that, where I think people are gonna do more interesting stuff. And yeah, Godard always feels like he's working at the very last minute. He's put off every bit of production, and he's just figuring it out by the seat of his pants. And what he kind of puts out, what his like first instinct isn't always that great. The philosophy sometimes feels really inane, and like especially the way he treats women in these films. Like I just I almost would like a second draft, as much as that goes against this idea of doing films really quickly and cheaply. It always feels like he's not living up to his potential in some way.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I can only imagine that at the time this was the only way it could be done. I know. I mean, you can hypothesize, and for sure, one could hypothesize various other ways that he could have created films, produced them in terms of the details and fleshed them out and all this stuff. And then at the same time, I feel like this just had to be the way it was done. We'll say that. This just had to be the way it was done, in some sense. Like, On the Road by Jack Kerouac it's kind of a crazy piece of literature. You know what I mean? Like, it's very odd. It's his treatment of characters, the way he writes. It's sloppy, and yet why it's remembered is because he did it all in like 2 nights and speed and cigarettes, and it feels like at this time in the 50s, late 50s, 60s, there needed to be people who were brave enough to just relentlessly share through art what they were feeling as unfiltered as possible. I think Jackson Pollock comes to mind. These are people who are, like, in a way, it's very fearless. Even today's standards, you watch it and you go, "What am I watching?" There's a fearlessness to it.
It took a certain type of person, yeah. And he had some means, and what he didn't have, he stole. He stole from friends and family. He would take money out of the Cahier's till to go make a short film or to go get a train ticket to Cannes. He was kind of like, he was putting himself and his filmmaking first and doing whatever he wanted. He had that sort of confidence to say, whatever I make is going to be worthwhile, that I don't have to follow any rule. I can break any rule that I want. And it doesn't come across as like so amazing now, but that really did strike people as incredible and new and unheard of. There's an anecdote that Chantal Akerman, at the age of like 15, went to go see this film, Pierrot le Fou, and walked out of the theater just in a daze and said, "I have to make movies. Like, this is what I want to do. I've never seen anything like this, but I want to make films now." And that's the thing also with this film in particular. It's 5 years after Breathless, so there's kind of a new audience for it, and it's bringing out a bigger audience too because it's color and widescreen. You got Belmondo, who's kind of become a big star, and Godard has been kind of minted as one of the leading artists of this time, not just filmmakers, but people are saying Jean-Luc Godard is art. Like, this is the moment. Everything is changing. Yeah, he's like a Jackson Pollock. He's like an Andy Warhol or someone. Like, this is a new way forward.
Yeah, that's why I always think, like, watching his films can be frustrating, but talking about them is super fun. It's not a lot of films like that, really. Where you're like, it can be really painful, and then you're like, but then it's fun to talk about. And I really mean like playful in that term. Like, there could be a challenging film, and then like it's interesting to talk about and all that. But with Godard, it's like it's fun, it's playful. There's it's inspiring, in the way he in what he does.
Chapter 9. Filmmaking and Love. We piece this story together, after the fact. What was once all mixed up, now is hindsighted, short-sighted, nearsighted, far-sighted. Every film is a moment of life and death, its own crisis and revelation, agony and epiphany. Today, they are but tallies on the long board of history. But once upon a time, people stubbed their toes. People got diarrhea. All that is lost to time, smoothed over into one uniform story. We piece the story together, all mixed up. So yeah, between Breathless and this, I think he made like 10 other films in those 5 years. It was crazy. Yeah. It was on his second and third films that he first worked with Anna Karina, the actress in this movie, and they quickly got married. They got sort of separated and back together a couple times. But I think it was before Alphaville, the film before Pierrot, that they actually get divorced. I think, yeah. The other thing is, like, he is often very autobiographical in his films, and he'll put his own writing in the films. Like the journal is his own writing in this, or he'll do narration for a film, and the characters and the situations reflect the situations in his life in some way, and it's very easy to read what happens with an Anna Karina character in any of his films as something analogous to what was happening in his relationship with her. And of course, at the end of this film, she runs off with another man, which was, according to him, what happened in real life. I get the sense more that she wanted to leave and he made it really difficult for her for an extended period of time. And she was in a lot of ways done with the relationship before he was. And even if he wasn't ready for her to be in another relationship, she had moved on by the time that she had gotten in a relationship with someone new. But yeah, you kind of see that reflected in this film, which was based on this American novel by Lionel White called Obsession. And he changes some things and basically, throws all his own dialogue into it. But it's got this structure of a man running away with a woman. He changes it in this film so that they knew each other in the past. And it's this rekindling. But, it's this sort of bitter man who's bored with his life, and he kind of, for almost no reason at all, decides to run away.
Run away and get into some trouble and wander around with Marianne, is it? Anna Karina's character.
Yeah, I think that's right, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, in a very large sense, like there's no need to keep up with the narrative of a Godard film, usually. I mean, some of them you do, but generally it's more about the experience, the felt kind of expression that's going on, how you're supposed to feel.
The different scenes and the tricks that he's doing, yeah.
Yeah. Delighting in how the film flows and fragments rather than like trying to stay up with like whatever is going on. Because there are plenty of times where Godard will just like, it seems like he's like been editing a certain scene and like he gets bored and he's like, let's just stop it here and move to the next scene. And you as an audience have to be like, okay, I guess we're here now. And it just almost feels like some sort of joke he's pulling on us.
Yeah, yeah.
He's playing a joke on everybody at all times.
Yeah. The big sequence near the start that sticks out to me is the dinner party where it's got the different colored lighting, and everyone's sort of shot up against the wall. It's like this very stiff party. The men only talk about cars, and the women only talk about their hair and their clothes and stuff. He said, he's obviously commenting on consumerism, but also, I don't know, it feels like he's very reductive about women all the time in these films, and like, if they can be as intellectual as a man or anything like that. He leans really hard into that. Near the end of the party, like, the women's clothes start disappearing. They're all naked.
Yeah, well, the one woman comments how she's like, lingerie is too, what does she say, risque or something, and yet she's naked.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of the things he's doing with all of that, though, is it's never like, it's rarely ever portrayed in like a sensual way, the nudity. I mean, sometimes it is in various films, but here, in this case, they're just at a party, just standing. And the men, they're barely together with the men that they're standing with. So it feels very formal. So it's like he's showing us these various aspects of life in a weird way. The women are nude. The men are in their suits. They're barely interacting. It's sort of like it's just that continual deconstruction, like just have everything exactly the same, except the woman's naked and they're talking about strange things, whether it's philosophical ideas or advertisements for lingerie or whatever it might be. And it feels very surreal a lot of the time.
Yes. Yeah, almost suggesting this idea that these women are just objects in the eyes of these men. What they say kind of suggests that these advertisements have almost brainwashed them into only caring about how they're perceived by men, these sorts of things. And yeah, the Anna Karina character, I guess, is a little different, as much as she's made to be someone who is like frustrated with, the intellectual man. She's more of a free spirit in some way. At least I think that's how she would have come across to the audiences at that time.
Yeah, for sure. It does seem like that. Yeah. And I always think with these films, like with Antonioni, he does the same type of thing where he's judging the stereotypical male gaze at the time, and they're doing something in a way that's kind of trying to shed light on the immorality, the wrongdoing of certain men and the way they interact with women. But they are still going to be doing it from their own perspectives, which is also still flawed for our current time. But like, again, somebody had to do it. And I agree, the way it's done is sloppy at times. But yeah, comparing this to American-made films, it's definitely sending a lot of daggers at that.
Yeah. The way the story plays out is kind of reminiscent of Bonnie and Clyde, which has yet to come out, but the script had already been written by, I think it was a couple of Vanity Fair journalists who were really inspired by the new wave films, and they had approached Godard with the Bonnie and Clyde script, which he was really interested in, but then decided he had some funding lined up for some other movie, and he was going to go work on that, and he wasn't going to be able to get that off the ground with them. But it feels like that idea is still in the back of his head about a couple that's sort of, saying, to hell with society, we're going to go do our own thing. and they embark on a road trip. He was thinking about some of those 30s and 40s films when he was making this, but this is I feel like this is the era of the road trip movie. There's a big film a couple of years earlier than this called It's a Mad, Mad, Mad World, which is one of those first like big ensemble comedies where everyone's like racing to get somewhere for money or something. The road trip movie is in at this point, and he's having fun with that, but he's also poking fun at it too. When you have scenes where they're just like walking from one side of a big landscape to the other and nothing's happening, that feels a little poking fun at how sensationalized the sort of road trip is.
Yeah. I was thinking of that. The road trip, or the times when they're in the car during the night in the beginning part of the film, the colors of the lights are very, they're beautiful, but it does show, I think, for maybe the first time, Godard using a studio to do a car scene, because that's definitely not, as far as I could tell, not on the road. They're inside a studio, and there's these lights of different colors swirling across the windshield, which is a beautiful scene, and barely, it's not that recognizable that it's in a studio, but it is, and I don't think that Godard has done that before. I think he does this because how else would you ever be able to be in a car with that kind of color at that point, and
at night, right?
And at night,
that's the problem.
You'd have to build a huge set. Would you have to build a huge set with or a road with all these different colored lights on the road? Like, there's no way.
Yeah, I think you wouldn't be able to illuminate them inside the car.
That too,
yeah. They don't have fast color film at this point. That's why they're shooting like kind of on sets inside a lot of the time, or it's outdoors in this film. But that's also they've got the big camera that they can't move around a whole lot like he would in some of his black and white films.
Still does a good job with that though. They still do a really good job blocking and moving the camera through the building and through rooms and things like that. Oh, and that one actually, I'm thinking of actually there's a couple sequences where they bowl, and so they take that big camera and they follow.
Oh yeah.
The person bowling. They follow the bowling ball down the alley, hitting the pins, and then waiting for that ball to roll back. And they do it slightly different each time, and it's really well done.
Yeah, I like how he shoots interiors where the camera might be kind of like on a tripod, but it's moving with the characters as they're like moving around the room, and it feels really kinetic, even though it's in one spot. But it's a lot of when you're outdoors and he can't put down tracks super easily. There's a lot more static shots in this film.
Right. Right. Those early colorful scenes reminded me of Vertigo a little bit, just because of the color. Yeah. And I also think of Nicholas Ray's films like Rebel Without a Cause, or They Live by Night. These are. It feels like his first like Nicholas Ray feeling film. And
I like that.
I know those guys liked him to some degree, so I could see him having been inspired. And here because what was his other color film he did early on? Was it A Woman is a Woman?
Yes,
that didn't feel as much. Yeah, that was more musical based, which this does too. This has a couple musical numbers in it, so it's making fun of musicals in a way.
Yeah.
And also Samuel Fuller, who was in it, his little cameo.
Yeah, he's at the party, right? And I guess he's doing color, isn't he? Or I don't know. I haven't seen anything since we watched The Steel Helmet.
Yeah, I don't know about color, but I'm just thinking of all the different influences that he must have had, and of course Fuller's in there just to give a comment. I always wonder if Godard is asking the people who are real life actors or directors to come up with stuff themselves. Like, it feels like something that Fuller would have said what he says, and not something that Godard gave him to say.
Yeah, I think it would. I think at least in that case, he did let Fuller speak for himself, apparently. Yeah, and he didn't know what he was going to say, and then when Fuller says it's like film's like a battlefield, there's love, there's violence, all these things. Apparently, Godard was behind the camera with a tear in his eye, literally. Like, you know, he loves these guys, these American directors, and just kind of like what it means to be a director. So that's, yeah, like in that case, that's someone that he wants to kind of represent authentically in the film.
I like that. That's great. Well, the film, I was thinking of when you talk about the color, it starts with those scenes in the party, which are colorful. It has those driving sequences. She's wearing red. And although color is for sure used a lot, in the second half of the film, there's definitely a trajectory here. So in the first part, they go on the run, and then they start getting more trouble. I mean, there's sequences in this that are kind of ridiculous in a way, where they crash a car on accident somehow or whatever, then they fake that crashed and they light their whole car on fire, and then just walk away with the car burning.
Yeah, that feels like, Godard saying, we have to have a crash here, this is a big budget film, so we should crash some cars. And that car is like, they come upon that crash, which is utterly impossible. Like, those people somehow driven off of that bit of highway that's like doesn't go anywhere. It's just one little section of road suspended up in the air. So it's all impossible. It's all fake. And he's letting you know that,
Was that road or that bridge, are you saying, was that there, do you think, or was that?
It looked like it looked too
real,
deteriorated to be built for the
film. As an unbelievable location.
Yeah. Yeah. It's suggesting that you could use that to make it look real, but he purposely shows you a wider shot where you see that, that's only one little piece of road not connected to anything. That it's obviously not a real road. Yeah. And he'll show you the artifice, but then he does stuff that I just had to yell at the screen at, like when they literally drive into the water and the two actors have to jump out and abandon the car. They literally sank that car into the water. That was apparently Godard's own car.
Whoa.
And yeah, he had imported it from America, but didn't bother to get the French registration or whatever you would have to do to import that. So he was like, I guess I technically can't drive this, so I'll just get rid of it. I'll use it for the film.
Wow. There's a sort of Buster Keaton-esque quality to it a little bit. The guy's jumping up and down on bridges and things like that, and sitting in front of the train coming down his way, and then gets out of it.
Yeah. You can't. They wouldn't let you do that today, man.
No.
That stuff is crazy.
You know who else I think of when I think of this film a little bit is Jean Vigo. I mean, I think of him a lot in terms of inspiring all these guys, but this is kind of like Le Atlante, where it's two lovers, and it's just kind of a free-spirited anarchy of a film,
Yeah, they loved him. Godard, Truffaut, those guys.
Yeah.
And they mention Michelle Simon, who was the first mate with all the tattoos and stuff in L'Atlante. They mentioned a Michelle Simon film about some lovers. I'm not sure if that is a reference to L'Atlante or not. But
That's
then,
interesting. Yeah.
yeah, then Belmondo does that impression. I think he's doing a Michelle Simon impression.
Wow.
When he does that, like, I've got a new idea for how to write the novel that Joyce couldn't write. It should be like this.
Yes.
I loved that. That was so funny.
That was great.
And I want to believe that's a Michelle Simon impression.
I can see that being the case. Yeah. That is a huge aspect of why Le Atlante works, is because of his acting. I mean, that it elevates the film. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that. And that was such a good little part. It was very transformative, that part of that film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Chapter 420. Politique. You wouldn't know it because he doesn't physically appear in the film, I think. But Jean-Luc Godard is white. Politics is identity. Politics is everything. And you're not above it all just because you're better than the fascists. All mixed up. We piece this story together.
I mean, you do have this sad, sort of questionable portraying of Vietnamese. I think it was a Vietnamese person, right? It was like the Americans and the Vietnamese. And I know what he's
yellow face.
Yeah, I mean, I know what he's doing. And at the time, they just didn't have that understanding of what that would look like. But I think it works in a way because the whole thing is just so free-spirited and so playful. Unlike Antonioni's blackface in Les Clis, that is a bit too serious and a bit too...
Isn't that kind of the same thing? Isn't that Monica Vitti's character, like, putting that on for Friends, sort of in the same way that Anna Karina's character's, like, doing a performance?
She is, and I watched it again, and I realized I kind of leaned into... Well, I leaned into and realized that the friend, she's basically like, stop. And it's actually an interesting kind of conflict between the friend who goes to Africa and treats the Africans poorly, literally, and then when her friends when her friends dress up like Africans and are being playful, then she goes, you guys have to stop. So that's this weird double standard that he's actually shining a light on from that one character's perspective, I think. So yeah, they're trying new things, and sometimes they did things that today we look back and say that's not right now. Now that's not correct at all.
Right. Right. Yeah, it does say something about how people acted, how they thought at the time.
Yeah.
And kind of gets you to think about that. Because these characters are really outlandish, and they kind of don't care about anything. They don't care about who they offend or whatever. There's so many little things that they toss off at people. Yeah, fill up, put a tiger in my car. The guy's like, we don't sell tigers, man. It's like,
well,
okay,
then just
fill it up with gas and shut up.
Yeah, there's a part at the end where he's like, have you seen a girl lately come through here? And he's like, she looks like she'd be an actress in a American Hollywood Technicolor.
Yeah. When they're putting on that play for the Americans, I think he flashes the letters SS on the screen.
Oh yeah.
Just kind of poking fun at what the United States was up to internationally at the time,
Mm-hmm.
As there's a lot of Vietnam in this film. I didn't realize that was going to be the case, but that was becoming something that was a big deal.
Mm-hmm. They're never shying away from bringing up politics in there. They seem to do that every time, mentioning something about
and sometimes it feels like Godard he's just doing it to be provocative.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he always feels like someone who sort of thinks of himself a little bit as above politics. So it's also interesting that it's, after he makes a couple more films, that he gets to a point in 1968 when there's widespread protests in France and all these things going on around the world, that he abandons commercial filmmaking and he joins up with a group of filmmakers that they call themselves the Zika Vertsov group after the Soviet documentarian, and they start making leftist propaganda films, basically. It's not, I wouldn't really expect that for Godard, but you get the sense in some of these that he's thinking about how messed up everything is, that he's connecting a little bit Hollywood and American war profiteering and all these things like that. Her supposed brother is smuggling arms somewhere, but then we meet this guy and he appears to be like a choreographer who's like working with this like dance troupe, like they're gonna film a big color film or something.
Oh yeah.
It does feel like he's pointing out the ways that these different types of films are spectacles. They kind of distract us from what's going on, and that there's this Vietnam War and there's American orchestrated coups and all these things, and why are we making films like this when this is happening?
Yeah, I mean, there's a part in the film I'm thinking of where it's like that guy shows up when he gets 2 beers, and the guy shows up, sits down, he said, "Do you remember me?" And he said, who are you again?" He goes, "You stole 50,000 francs from me, and I remember you slept with my wife." And he's like, "Oh yeah." And then the guy just gets up and walks away.
Yeah.
That's so, he's, he is suddenly, I feel like, because he's been on the run, they're being chased by people constantly. And then in this moment, you're like, oh crap, he's gonna, this guy's gonna have a little fight with him, and he's gonna get into some trouble here. And in that moment, nothing happens. The guy just gets up and walks away. It's subversive. You are constantly not understanding what's about to happen, what you're gonna be, what the next thing's gonna be. And I think in that scene, what that really shined a light on for me in this whole film was that Godard, he doesn't seem to actually care. It's kind of like what Hitchcock said, like in terms of the emotional response. Like that's all that really mattered, was just making people feel something, just getting an emotional response out of them. I sometimes come away with that with Godard. Is he just doing all of this because he's just trying to stir the pot? And of course, in personal life, he probably cared about things politically and stuff like that. But you gotta wonder.
Yeah, I almost feel like a lot of times when he's making these films in the first part of his career, he feels like he's not a director like a Hitchcock. He can't do everything that Hitchcock is capable of doing. So he's just not gonna try at that. He's gonna make something that kind of elicits a reaction from the audience in some other way.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that the Belmondo character talks about, these artists that wanted to find a new way of painting, just like the elements, painting the colors and things, no longer having a subject, like that feels like something that he would aspire to in his filmmaking, but that doesn't feel like there's a way to do that.
Mm-hmm.
People expect something out of a film, and you can show them a little bit of what they expect and then pull the rug out and leave them with some questions and some thoughts that they wouldn't have had just go into a regular film.
Yeah, and that is that sense that you get. Do you feel like with Pierre le Fou that it's like some kind of strange remake of Breathless in a way as well? I mean, he takes the same actor that he took for Breathless, and it's another on the run, violent kind of guy. Do you feel like it's just some sort of warped remake of Breathless in a way?
Yeah, in a certain sense. Yeah, I feel like I don't know, that's that made sense to him, you know, that kind of crime story, or that was a way to work out his feelings about the rigidity of society, you know, that you could make a character that didn't care and would kill someone as quick as they would, you know, run away with a woman and, you know, do all these different things.
And he just seems to be like, he's up in the ante with everything he's already done. Like, it feels like there's the scene where they're torturing him in the tub. And so now, instead of with Le Petit Soldat, was that what that was from?
Yeah.
And so instead of, you know, kind of like black and white, kind of handheld from a distance, you're watching it. With this, you're like right up next to him. You're in the tub with him. It's a red dress around his face, and they're torturing him that way.
Yeah.
So he's taking all of these things that he's done. It feels so many things, and he's putting them all in one film. You know?
Oh yeah. He's throwing the whole kitchen sink in there.
He did, yeah. I guess that's well. I more than before. I'm thinking about how this really feels like if this film feels like a film where you've like seen it all done before. But the difference is like he's like making fun of himself in a way because he's just doing all of the things he's already done in every other film and then just throwing them all into one, like you said, like a blender.
Yeah.
Does it win
a prize?
Yeah, sorry. Does it win at Venice?
No, it doesn't. Yeah, it goes to Venice to a somewhat divisive reception. A lot of people really don't like it there. A lot of people are big fans, though. And kind of when it comes out in France in earnest is when people really adopt it and say, this is, you know, he's maybe reached his peak here, you know. So, like, ultimately, people really, really love it. And it does good business and all of that. But I forget who it was. Someone said this feels like a film you can only make once, or this is the last time you can make a film like this, you know? And yeah, in hindsight, we know he's not too far from that point where he's going to stop making these commercial films. And yeah, we go off the deep end kind of in the last part of this movie. It becomes something like a James Bond parody with that like little person and the super big guy that brawls with Belmondo and I don't know. The plot is nonsensical. Anna Karina is like sniping at guys in cars and and then she's running off with the fake brother and, you know, surprise, he's not a brother or something. They share a kiss. It's this, women are heartless killers, you know. They'll shoot a guy and what because she says something, doesn't she say, like, think about, you know, those women fighting in Vietnam and Israel and these different places, like, they didn't care. They were just fine killing people, you know. And he's making his ex, you know, that avatar of the heartless killer who will abandon, you know, this man that she's run away with.
That's quite something to do.
Yeah. And there's I think she's sailing off with her with the other guy, and Belmondo like wanders down the dock and meets that guy who has the song stuck in his head, and I loved that guy's monologue so much. That guy's amazing. Apparently, he's a big comedian in France named Raymond DeVos. But I that was maybe my favorite little bit in the film.
That was fantastic. Yeah, that was beautiful. yeah, that's similar to, again, that, what was the actor in Le Atlante?
Michelle Simon.
Yeah, sort of resembled that, just in its real candidness. It's kind of a realistic quality too.
Yeah, he's so earnestly humming the tune, and I was petting her hand this way. Da, 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 da. Do you love me? Oh my God! Good. And then that kind of leads into the end, where he, I don't know, heartbroken, paints his face blue, and wraps himself in dynamite, and in kind of a funny cut, he's like gonna set it aflame, and it's like, oh shit, and boom, it goes up.
Yeah, I think the face paint, that blue, I think is maybe like a Picasso blue period thing. I'm guessing, because it's melancholy, it's the sadness and heartbreak, and yes. Then he tries to set him. Then he takes a while wrapping that dynamite around him. Very,
that's true.
Long shot of we're wrapping this thing around my head. Lights it, and then he's like, oh shoot.
Yeah, it takes so long, and then the cut still feels abrupt when it explodes.
Yeah. Right.
Which is fun.
Right. Almost the longer you wait for something, actually builds tension. So the more abrupt it is.
Yeah. What's your takeaway from the whole thing?
Well, I think after we've talked about it in this way and really realizing just how much of each other film he's already done, he references and puts back into this one. I actually love that idea. And I don't know, it feels to me like it's like the most Godard film to me. I think it's because it's self-referential in many ways. And I was delighted with it, compared to some of his other ones that we watched recently. Alphaville, I'm still thinking about that one. I liked it, but it was a little too experimental, I think,
really,
for me
I felt really scattershot.
Yeah.
Kind of thrown
and also,
together.
Yeah, and I love that he plays around with big budget and B movie feeling. I love that kind of mix. But sometimes it's just difficult to keep up with. It's difficult to stay on track with what's going on, and it feels low budget at times. Just gives that sense, like I'm watching a low budget film. So it takes away from the quality at times. But with this, I didn't feel that. I didn't feel like he was doing that. It just felt fun and playful, and like he was just leaning into his own thing. And I liked it. I think I would hold it up with, if I had to pick a top three, I think I'd put this one with Breathless and Vivre sa vie.
Yeah. I'm pretty much right there with you. Yeah. There were parts that were difficult, especially when it's just the two of them sharing those sort of philosophical lines back and forth. But yeah, there were a lot of bits I ended up liking, and I think it's a pretty gorgeous film. Coming up here soon, mm-hmm. There's supposed to be a screening, I think a 35 millimeter screening of it, and I'd love to see it in that format.
Nice. That would be beautiful. Yeah. That'd be beautiful.
And those,
because it was a gorgeous film. It was so pretty. Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to those songs because, he's sort of commenting on musicals there. But mm-hmm. This also comes after Umbrellas of Cherbourg, which feels like a big new type of musical in France, and feels like he's kind of commenting on that as well, you know.
If not mocking.
Yeah, yeah. A little bit, I would think.
Yeah.
But
the
but
content
still,
of the lyricism in it, is
they're fun, but they're like disconnected, from
yeah.
what's happening.
Yeah, they're disconnected from what's happening, and also the content is like it's not lovey-dovey. It's not romantic. It's more. What's he say? Like she says, like, "Oh the lines of my hand are small, and I don't. What does that mean? What does that mean about my palm? If you kind of read my palm, what would that look like?" And then he's just singing about how he only cares about her thigh lines.
Yeah,
and so this is sort of removing the romanticism from a musical.
Yeah, which, you'd kind of say that what's that? What's his name? Umbrellas of Cherbourg.
Yeah, what is his name?
His name is Varda's husband. That's what his name is.
I didn't realize that. Jacques Demy.
Demy, yes. Jacques Demy. Yeah, I think his films, or at least, Umbrellas, and probably the one that we're going to watch eventually, The Young Girls of Rochefort. Those are kind of deconstructing musicals, they're about mundane life, and they have moments of people being very romantic and idealistic, but then there are a lot of songs of just petty arguments between family members.
Oh, true.
Stuff like that.
True.
So maybe it's hard to say how Godard felt about those films without knowing. But it always feels like he's having fun and saying, this is silly. These movies that we make, all of this is silly.
Chapter 12. Silliness.
Silliness, life, death.
Trees, flowers, the sea, the sky above. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
That he does that so many times.
Yeah.
It's really wild.
I love it. It's because it feels like the take ends, but he leaves the rest of the film, the rest of what they shot in the film. And it's like the music cuts, and the music doesn't start until they cut to the shot that is supposed to be, there when the music ended. Are those bits when, like, Anna Karina is saying something to someone off screen, and then she looks, like, at the camera and at whoever's behind the camera, and then she looks back and gives the line again, and then looks back at the camera.
Yeah, I wonder when the first breaking the fourth wall was. I don't know that offhand, but they definitely do it in this, where they're driving and she turns around and he's like, "Who are you talking to?" She's like, "The audience." He's like, "Oh, okay." Or maybe it's the other way around. He turns around and says something. Mentioning the audience overtly feels like a novel thing to do. Sure, it had been done, but still fun.
Yeah. It like happens in different ways. This is...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
This is so brazen, This isn't like Chaplin, directly addressing the audience at the end of Great Dictator or something.
He's pulling from Chaplin in certain ways, though. So maybe that's where that's where he's getting from. Yeah.
You could probably go back and find examples of that in the Lumiere films or something.
Yeah.
But he's not supposed to do that these days.
Right. Right. Doesn't it feel like, okay, last thing. He is sort of lucky, is he not, that he was able to break rules, that there were rules to break. Like, today, filmmakers do have a tough time, in some sense, because so many rules have been broken. So it's harder, it's more difficult to be novel with rule breaking. At his time, there was so many rules. The Hays Code was still going on, so his movies would be censored if they were sent to places like America. sort of lucky that these people had the opportunity to break rules, that they had rules to break. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. I was trying to think of, what would it look like even to break with the conventions today as much as this broke with the conventions at that time, you know? We like Radu Jude's films, what we've seen so far.
Yes.
And, sometimes it feels like he's attempting to do that.
Do not expect much from the end of the world, yeah?
Yeah, put different stuff in there.
Yeah.
It's the end of that film, right? When he does the unbroken take of them shooting the PSA with the family.
Yeah.
It's even that doesn't feel like so radical,
Right.
I thought of Megalopolis because, there's a film. I still haven't seen it, but like the clips and things that I have seen, there's a film that's trying to get you, trying to like surprise you with the form itself, I think.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't going to like that. Like, a lot of people didn't care about what Godard was doing. But, let's try some stuff. Let's shake it up, man.
Yeah, Harmony Korine comes to mind. He did that film recently that was like shot all in with like a heat-seeking video.
Yeah.
So. Again, not everyone's going to like it, but he for sure does weird stuff. Or the guy who Enter the Void, that director.
Right,
Yeah, there are people who do weird stuff. It's just that it's more and more difficult because more and more rules get broken as time goes on.
It is, and it really depends on sort of what your platform, what your kind of format is, Like, for his films to get wide releases, at least in France, and probably fairly wide, some of them in America, but like it was crazy for any amount of the audience to be someone who just walks in not knowing what a Godard film is. Meanwhile, we when we go to some of these sort of art house films now, it's not surprising if someone's doing something unconventional. It would be surprising if it was some big film that plays at, in AMC and it's doing something you've never seen before.
That's right. Yeah. The way to subvert is ever evolving. Yeah, it's ever evolving. Yeah. It's like you get crazier and crazier and crazier. Eventually, the thing that will capture your attention is quiet. As a silly example, I remember a commercial one time was extremely quiet, and it caught people's attention because every other commercial was loud and sometimes annoying, or
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah,
and then this commercial came on, and it was like a person whispering, which
I think we gotta think outside the box, and what are people not used to right now? I don't know.
Aggro drift. That's the name of that. That's the name of that Harmony Korine.
Yes. And he came out with another one, Baby Invasion, which I think.
Oh, is that POV?
Takes. I don't know what it is. It takes place in a video game or something.
Yeah. First person POV. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah,
so then this is, so now he's doing such weird stuff that people are torn. Very divisive thing to do, which Godard is.
Yeah, I think we feel kind of similar. He's not my favorite director,
Mm-hmm.
I haven't like absolutely fallen in love with his films, but I do understand why they're important historically, and they can be really fun and interesting. Yeah.
I totally agree.
Another fun, interesting filmmaker is Agnes Varda, and that's what we're talking about next week, right? Le Bonheur.
Yes. What is the translation of the title?
Happiness? I think this is her... think this is her first feature film since Cleo from 5 to 7. Is that right?
I would say that that's right. So she was not nearly as prolific as Godard by comparison. She would sometimes take a little while in between each film.
Yeah, she liked doing different sorts of projects, and also, didn't have as many opportunities necessarily, but for instance, in between those two films, she traveled to Cuba and made a short documentary out of the photographs that she took there. It's called Salute Le Cubain, and it's a very interesting watch. I watched it recently.
Oh, nice.
But it took her a little longer than the boys to really be recognized for the incredible artist that she is. But I've loved her stuff so far, and I'm really excited to watch this.
Yeah, well, I think the trajectory, at least on the Sight and Sound list, is she is gaining in appreciation, and people like Godard are losing out. Like the appreciation has become more balanced. Good to see.
Yeah, and we can say that she was there first, you boys. La Pointe Court, look it up.
Yeah. So appreciated and under recognized.
Seriously.
La Pointe Court. So good.
All right, man.
So
good episode.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'll be fun.
Yeah, make sure you check out Letterboxd profiles and hit us up at the Gmail that we linked. Until next time.
Peace.